Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Ops for Vets. We are so glad that you've decided to join us this afternoon or this evening, depending on where you are. I'm Tracy Lawrence, your host for the evening. I'm president of High Surety and Insurance Services, where we do performance and payment bonds for government construction contractors. We solve bond problems. I have the privilege of hanging out with our special guest or all-time guest or co-host, Jane Babcock. Jane, would you introduce yourself to our audience, please, ma'am?
Sure enough. I am Jane Babcock. Many of you know me from LinkedIn. I am a retired Sergeant First Class, Army Reserves, 48214s. I kept going home and they kept calling me back. And then almost 12 years as an accredited county veteran service officer. So I know all about VA benefits, how to get them, what kind of evidence you have to provide, and things like that. So tonight we're going to talk compensation, what it's all about, why they pay it, how you submit for it if you don't have the standard service records and things like that can help you. And then we're going to talk about several other things. This is going to be a two-part show because it is pretty extensive, but we're also going to talk about some of those little hidden rules that you need to know about before you file a claim. So sit back, listen up, put your questions in the chat, and we'll get started.
Thanks, Jane. For those of you that were with us in prior episodes, you know the last episode, the thing to do was to reach out and contact your VSO. So I'm assuming that you guys did that. If you want to tell me you did that, put that in the chat. We'd love to hear that. And Jane, let's talk compensation. Let's talk about it.
Okay, doke. Well, just to let y'all know, I am from Wisconsin, but right now I'm in Denver, Colorado on vacation. But you're worth dropping a few hours of time off and using it to educate our fellow veterans. So let's talk compensation, what it's all about. VA. The Department of Veterans Affairs, along with our federal government, originally way back in the Civil War days, started, soldiers' homes and hospitals and things like that for the injured and wounded. But they also started developing a compensation system. And that was the idea that the farmer that came home and he was missing a leg, he's going to have a difficult time walking behind the plow to keep earning his living that way. And or the veteran that goes blind from a cannonball explosion or something. So the development of compensation was the idea that they're going to replace some of the employment opportunities. It originally is based on employment, and they do consider some quality of life standards in there, but generally it's to replace the income. Because even when it comes to mental health, that can hold a veteran back from advancing, whether it's not being able to be very social, which maybe his job field or his career requires it, or like our Vietnam guys who develop type 2 diabetes, and maybe they've been a truck driver for 30 years. Type 2 diabetes is a disease that started very young after exposure to Agent Orange. So when a veteran develops it, the VA starts to compensate them because now all of a sudden that truck driver is no longer able to truck drive. And he's probably not able to get a job where he can go up on scaffolding and things like that because he might pass out, sugar drops or whatever, and bam, he hits the floor. Well, if the floor is 300 feet down, that's not a good thing. So VA compensation is to replace some of that employment income. One of the things that you have to consider, though, is the presumptive illnesses. These are things that come later in life. Although one of my Vietnam guys had his first heart attack at 28. Ischemic heart disease is on the list if you're an Agent Orange guy. And with the PAC Act, they expanded greatly the areas where they were using it, and they knew they were using it, but it wasn't on the record. They weren't supposed to be using it all over the Air Force bases in Thailand, just on the landing strip. But they finally admitted, yes, the record.
James, could you do me a favor? Could you speak up a little bit louder for us?
Certainly. Okay, let me see if turning this up helps a little bit. The presumptive illnesses, I was starting to talk about that, and that is the fact that you're exposed to so many things in service, whether it's through your military occupation, whether it's you were stationed at Camp Lejeune, and now Red River. Red River is by the Camp Lejeune, and then there's River Hill down at Pearl Harbor. That part of that area, the jet fuel tanks were buried. They were underground, and they actually ruptured those tanks. And for quite some time, several months at a time, the base was not allowed to drink the water. But the question was, how long were they drinking the water before they put that alert out? And how much of that was going into your washing machine and into your clothes? And, you know, if you were washing a vehicle at the wash station or anything like that, how much of that were you exposed to? So sometimes it's your MOS, sometimes it's your duty station, sometimes it's aerial spraying. Agent Orange right now, they're still looking at 12 sites where they stored it, tested it, here in the US and up in Canada even. So if you have any reason to think you are exposed to agents like Agent Orange, herbicides, and it's not just orange, it's purple and blue and all the other colors of herbicides that they were using at that time, the DMZ of Korea or any of those places. There's 40 cancers and a bunch of neurological conditions. So if you're a veteran and you served any time in service, you should get a copy of that presumptive list. For all of us, no matter where you served or how long you were on federal active duty, you were exposed to getting all those shots at one time. And that's just purely speculation on my part and on the part of all the other VSOs, that the one common factor between all branches of service is getting all of our shots at once. Whereas as children, you get your measles, mumps, rubella, and they tell you to come back in 3 months and get the next set of shots, the chickenpox or the measles, whatever. So in the service, you get 20 shots all at once. And we non-scientifically think that comes from the fact that we got all those shots, is Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS. It's a very, very ugly disease. I have 2 daughters who are caregivers. And so I know from personal experience what these victims go through. If a veteran walks into the VA or their VSO and says, I've just been diagnosed with ALS, here's my doctor's report, the VA doesn't argue. For every 3 people that get Lou Gehrig's disease or ALS, 2 of them are veterans.
Wow. Okay.
So if you know of a veteran or the widow of a veteran who suffered with ALS, please make sure. 11 and a half years I asked every veteran that came into my office or that I ran into, do you know ALS is a presumptive? And none of them. Literally thousands of veterans. When I do public outreaches, county fairs, farm tech days, the Brewer farm team salute game and things like that, and not a single veteran ever said yes to that question.
Can you, if you've already defined it, can you indulge me just a little bit and redefine presumptive for us, please?
Sure. Presumptive means that the VA is going to presume that your military service caused this condition. Just like the list of things for Camp Lejeune, just like the list of things for Agent Orange, just like things for burn pits, which this year they added 4 more conditions to the burn pit list. And so I found that as a CVSO in May, which is ALS month, I would always post an ad in the local paper. And I would usually get 2 or 3 widows that would come in and say, oh, my veteran died 14 years ago. I'm sorry, honey, they put it on the list 8 years ago. I can't get you the 8 years you've missed out on, but from today forward, I'm going to get you dependent indemnity compensation. That's the survivor's compensation. A lot of people go, wow, that's a mouthful. What does it mean? Basically, death compensation. Whenever a veteran dies of a condition caused by service, or their death is hastened by their service.
And then
One of yeah.
that dependent compensation, that's you said it's on a go forward basis. It's a monthly, is it a monthly stipend type situation for the widow
Yep.
or
It's
the
just
spouse?
yep. It's and the veteran may never have been rated by VA, but say he's an Agent Orange guy and he falls over from a heart attack. Odds are it's going to fall under the ischemic heart disease category, coronary artery disease, and other things. And so that day, that instant before they die, they are considered 100%. So if that widow comes in and files for it, their compensation starts the first full month after they file. So if they file on the 16th of the month, then they're eligible for pay on the first of the next month. And right now, that's $1,653 a month tax-free.
Okay,
So yeah.
that sounds. We don't want anyone in our viewing audience to miss out on anything like that. We need you to reach out to your VSO, reach out to the VA so that we can get that activated. So you can get that activated because every dollar that a veteran claims and benefits and spends in their community is helping the community economically. So it's like it's doing good all around. Good for the veteran, good for their family, and good for the community that they've served. We've gotta be on this.
Yes. Right now, you can look at the VA's data. If you actually go onto the VA website, va.gov, and you put in vet data, all one word, you can actually get to the analysis page where they keep all the statistics and data and how many veterans in each county, how many veterans of which ethnicity, gender, war period, blah, blah, blah. And they can break it down. In some reports, it's broken all the way down to the county level. So you can actually see in your state, in your county, how you're doing. And that data is what I used every year to do my annual report to show them how much improvement we were making, the greater number of veterans that were receiving benefits, the greater amount of benefits that our veterans are receiving, which helped me increase my office from 1.5 people to 3 people.
Go Jane, go Jane. Okay, all right.
Yep.
So let me make sure I understand what you're saying though. Vet data is a compilation of people that are actually using their or accessing their benefits, right?
Yes, it's a compilation of not only those receiving benefits, but the number of veterans in total. So when we look at the number in total that are receiving benefits, and then we look at the number of veterans that are not receiving benefits and knowing what war periods they served in and things like this, we're able to estimate that there probably is pretty close to 2 million veterans out there eligible for either compensation or wartime pension because they're living below poverty. That's an income-based program. Because after all, how many of our older guys that maybe served in Kentucky during the Korean War and now their spouse is deceased or they've divorced and they're living on one Social Security check? And the average Social Security check is barely poverty. So if you start taking off that Medicare premium and things like that, that's where that pension comes in. But that's another whole show. So let's swing back. Let's swing back to compensation.
Okay.
Help us
All right,
find those 2 million.
Let me just catch one thing that you said. You said the vet data has both the number that are actively using their benefits, but then it has the entire group that would be eligible for benefits. Okay.
Yes.
If you're on this webinar with us and you have not yet activated some of the compensation benefits, please take some notes, because the whole purpose of having an opportunity like this to just focus solely on benefits and how it's good for you, it's good for your family, it's good for the community, is to make some headway. So while
Yes.
Jane was using the data to increase her staff size, by showing I'm making progress, this show needs to show that it's making some progress, right?
Yep.
If you're gonna,
Yep.
there's over 300 of you guys, 300 of us registered for tonight's event. Did you know that, Jane?
Nope. That's a good thing.
I know. It's like it's over 300 of us registered for the show. We're all listening in, and first we need to get 100% of everybody that's listening in that's eligible. You need to move first, and then you need to tell a friend.
Yes. Yes. Exponential growth. It's like the theory of you have a penny and you gain a penny every day for each penny that you have. You could be a millionaire in no time. So
Sign me
let's
up.
find those. Yep. We need to find those 2 million veterans. And that data also shows that there's probably 1.5 to 2 million widows or widowers out there that are eligible either for death compensation or for wartime veterans and survivors pension. So listen close and share. You don't have to know the details, the exact eligibilities, and all this other kind of stuff. Really, when it boils down to it, if you know a fellow veteran, tell that fellow veteran to get registered with VA healthcare. Because right now, it is completely open to any toxic exposure veteran. Burn pits, Agent Orange, Camp Lejeune, all those things. And you say, some people will say, well, I've got great insurance, I don't need it. You know what? Your highest costing pharmacy bill, if you're using an inhaler at $100 and some a month, you're going to get it for 18 or maybe 8 because it's a generic. So right there, you're going to save a bunch of money. The other good thing is it helps them gather the data to say, oh, look at all these guys who were stationed at Taji, and they're all starting to develop this particular skin thing. Now they can reach out to all those guys that are on the toxic registry that were stationed at Taji and say, hey, are you having problems with the skin on your feet or on your hands? Come in and get tested and also get looked at, and we're going to consider it for the presumptive list. So you're helping yourself and your fellow veterans by at least participating in that annual physical. So getting back to presumptives.
Okay, we got one question. Can I get it? One of
Sure.
an attendee. Hey, Al Howard, how are you out there? Nice to see you. The question is, how do they file for their initial benefits? That's the question.
Okay. Well, you can go online nowadays and do all this stuff. You can enroll in VA healthcare based on your income, their zip code for where you live. They're going to know whether or not which category you fall into, 1 through 8G. And 8G is your income is so high that you don't need VA. But if you have service-connected disability, you could earn $1 million a year and still have access to the VA healthcare. Once you are rated 0%, and 0 means you were damaged by your service. Maybe you were a 105 howitzer mortarman. Well, that constant repercussive noise and things like that may have damaged your hearing. And it shifted just a tiny bit before you left service. Not enough for you to even notice. But they look at that record and they go, oh, well, we damaged your hearing. And it doesn't impact the quality of life. It doesn't stop your employment options right now. But we're going to rate you 0. And 20 years from now, when your wife is standing in front of the television because you can't hear her over the television, so then they can increase that rating. And you get your free hearing aids and all that stuff.
So what I think I heard you say was to start the process for initial benefits, you need to go online. Is that what you said?
No, it is an option. And many people do that. But I always tell people, please, please, please sit down with an accredited nationally accredited veteran service officer. And there is a VA website, one of the links that I send people all the time, on how to find the one closest to where you live. An accredited VSO goes to training every year, and they sign an ethics statement with the VA that says, I can represent cases to the VA, but I will not charge. Not a penny. In my 11 and a half, almost 12 years, I never charged a penny for anything I did for a veteran. And that's a requirement. If a VSO tries to charge you money, you're going to end up calling the VA hotline or the VA OIG office and reporting them. And they're going to lose their accreditation. So if you're out there, please don't pay a shark to file your claim.
And we won't, Miss Jane. We won't pay no sharks. We no sharks here. No sharks here.
Good. And granted, there are some really good claims agents / sharks, but there are some that will take advantage. $5,000 to file a claim that I know doesn't take even 2 hours of paperwork. There are certain claims like presumptives that are so basic and so simple that a guy could walk into my office and within 2 hours his paperwork was gone and it was already done. And you want to pay $5,000 for that? Or you want to pay a percentage of back pay? Oh, gee, guess what? They didn't put it as an expedite and you have a cancer. If they had expedited that claim, you could have a response in 30 days. But they'd only get one of that percentage would only be off that 1 month of back pay. So, gee whiz, it's okay with us if it takes 14 months for you to get your claim done. Because now I got much more money to take my percentage off the top. Back in 2008, when the economy was upside down and all the foreclosures were happening, it was taking 3 years to get a claim through.
Gee whiz.
So if you were charging 30% or 20% even of a back pay of a cancer, which is active 100% when the cancer is active and for up to a year after to make sure that you're free and clear of it. So potentially 2 years at 100%, and now I'm going to take 20% off the top. As a claims agent, that's a pretty good payday for something that only took 2 hours worth of paperwork.
We have two comments that we got in the chat, and thank you guys for putting your notes in the chat. Hi Shirley, we see you out there. The question was, what does it take to get a Nexus letter? Okay, so before you answer that, I need to know what a Nexus letter is, and then how do we get one?
Okay. Well, Nexus letters are needed, but only when there's not clear evidence that whatever is going on wrong with you is service-connected. So, the veteran that develops cancer because of his exposure to some chemical related to his MOS, he's going to need a Nexus letter because the doctor is going to have to be able to say, I looked at his service treatment records, I looked at some of his information, I looked at the buddy statements that described the events in service that either exposed him or when he jumped off the back of the deuce in half, he twisted his knee and he limped around for 5 days afterwards. And it's been 7 years since he left service, but maybe I've treated him on and off for knee pain. I can say as a doctor, as likely as not, I can put the scale at 50-50 that his initial injury was the time he jumped off the back of the deuce and half. Or the fact that
Okay, so can any doctor do this, or does it have to be a VA doctor?
No. Most Nexus letters come from outside the VA.
Gotcha. Okay.
But they have to be supported by things like, okay, I've been treating him since he left service, or I reviewed his medical records back to then, or I reviewed personal statements from his spouse, employer, buddies, the guy that saw him jump off the deuce and half and, eat dirt. And so that the doctor can say with a reasonable expectation, it's a 50-50 shot. Once it's in equipoise, 50-50, the VA must lean in favor of the veteran. But if while you were in service, you went to sick call and you got the Motrin and the ice packs, and then your spouse writes a letter about on and off problems, or maybe you lost, your employer says, yeah, he used to be able to lift 50 pounds 3 times a minute doing his job, but we had to change jobs because the stooping and bending, his knee wouldn't hold up. So we switched to a, polishing get widgets jobs where he could sit and not have to bend his knees. That employer letter saying that we changed his employment situation because of his knee is now sufficient evidence. He doesn't have to have a nexus letter. He doesn't even have to have medical records since he left service, as long as he's got enough witnesses supporting that condition and that he's been this way. A spouse can testify to, yeah, he served 20 years, and believe me, by the end of it, I would have to stand in front of him to get him to hear me. Well, he's got that medical record. His exit physical shows there was a shift in hearing. There's no nexus letter needed. The treatment and service and those buddy statements make it sufficient. But if you didn't go on sick call and you don't have a service record, but you've had treatment since, or when it comes to PTSD, that's a real big one, where nexus letters are important. And the guy goes, guys come in the office and say, hey, my wife says I have to file for PTSD because I'm a grump and I'm drinking too much and blah, blah, blah. And I'd say, okay, have you ever been to counseling? Have you been diagnosed? We can't file for something that we don't know what your diagnosis is, because if we file for PTSD and it turns out that you have schizophrenia, the VA is going to say, well, that's an erroneous claim. So you have to get that diagnosis. And you have to go to counseling. I used to send my guys over to the vet center all the time. Go do 6 or 8 sessions at the vet center. Be honest. Be real honest when you talk about the fact that you don't cook out anymore because certain smells trigger you. Or that you are an antisocial. You can't stand being in a crowded bar. You don't even like taking your wife out to dinner because you feel like somebody might come barging in. Go, be honest, let that counselor write all the notes they want, and then those counselor notes you have to go over and see I always get this confused, psychiatrist, psychologist. One is kind that can actually prescribe heavy-duty drugs. He's the actual doctor that can completely diagnose you. He reads the counseling notes, he asks you a few questions, and he says, yep, I agree with your counselor, you have PTSD. Or maybe he says, I don't think it's full-blown PTSD because the events in service didn't threaten your life or the life of others around you. Maybe you were stationed back here stateside, but maybe you saw a horrific car accident and you rushed in to help people and some small child died in your arms. That's a fear of life. That's a potential cause for PTSD, even though you weren't in combat. But maybe the accident was bad, but nobody died, and so maybe you have some depression, anxiety issues because maybe you knew somebody in the car and you know that the rest of their life is going to be screwed up. So maybe it's depression, anxiety that you have, not full-blown PTSD. That's where that diagnosis comes in, because what you file for. I used to have my guys just file for mental health condition, anxiety, depression, possible PTSD. And that way, when they got the diagnosis, that's what we filed for. Whether it was just the first 2 or all 3. So it's real important to get those diagnoses. It's real important to get that connection to service, whether it's through service treatment records and then potential follow-on care or follow-on events in your life. I used to play baseball every Wednesday with the company team, but after a couple of years, I couldn't run the bases because I'd hit second and my knee would roll out and I'd, eat dirt.
Well, okay. All right. So, everyone out there, because we got a couple notes in the comments where someone was letting us know that they do have the 0 rating right now. The zero rating is right where you get started, and that's what we need. We need everybody to get started. And if you have been a veteran, getting into the VA healthcare system is what the community needs from you. It's what your family is going to need from you in the future. So because you may be zero today, but as Jane has been giving you examples, you know, um, 5 years from now, when you're not feeling like a zero, right, and you're feeling more like a 50 or a 70, the fact that you started the process is so helpful to getting you what you already deserve, right?
Yep.
So you got to get in that process. You got to start, and maybe start with 0, maybe start with 10, maybe start with 20, but you got to do that. um um, um, Al sent me a note, and he reminded me. He says, "Let them know. When you're in that system, that's not the time to be too proud to let them know what you're experiencing. It's the time to be transparent, so that you can receive your due. And when you receive your due in your community, that economic benefit is truly making a difference. And right now, girl, we can use a difference. We can use a
That's
difference in
true.
your health. We can use a difference in your family. We can use a difference in the neighborhood, right? Um,
Yep.
you were you were gonna. I kept interrupting you, so you get a chance to finish the presumptives. But we're still doing good on time. Do you want to try to finish the
Sure.
presumptives? Okay.
Yes. Let's step back a little bit and we'll go with presumptives again. The PAC Act, most of us know, came into effect just a couple of years ago, but as of January, they have added multiple myeloma. So if you know a veteran out there who served anywhere over in the Gulf or Southwest Asia,
What's multiple myeloma?
it's, oh gosh, I used to know the definition of that one. It's a type of cancer,
Oh, I see. Mhm.
okay? And then there's myelodysplastic syndrome, which is a blood disorder. And then there's myelofibrosis, and that's lungs. And then this is the young lady I was telling you about that just had mentioned that she was having kidney issues. She thought they were kidney issues. She went in thinking she had a bladder infection, and nope, she has a cancer, and the tumor is prolapsing. So it's actually showing on the outside of her body as well as internally. So
Wow.
she has a genitourinary cancer. Cancers involving the kidneys, the ureter, the bladder, all that stuff has been put on the PAC Act list, the burn pit list.
Wow. Okay.
Bladder cancer wasn't added to the Agent Orange list until 2021. Vietnam ended in 1975, and they just got enough statistics to put it on the list. So our younger veterans are very blessed that the Vietnam veterans have done so much data collection, and they worked so closely with Rosie and Leroy Torres and John Stewart and everything, and said, here's the data. And Rosie and Leroy and John Stewart and all these others, they went up to the Hill and kept stuffing it in the face of those senators and congressmen to get us the PAC Act pushed through. So the data is there, but where do they get that data? They get that data from us participating in the VA system. Going to the VA healthcare system is not going to get you your compensation. It's only getting those diagnoses. It's only providing the data to the VA for the VA to look at a situation and say, look at all these guys that are under the age of 30 that have this condition that's 2, 3, 5 times what the civilian population has. But once you're in the VA healthcare system, participating in those toxic registries will help you also in that it tells you, hey, there's this new skin condition or whatever. And, oh, you are having problems with the skin on your feet or your hands, and you need to go in. Oh, I actually do have that. Okay, there's another case, another piece where they might put it on the presumptive list. But I used to tell all my veterans, any serious health condition that you have, especially one you know that's going to go on the rest of your life, a skin condition generally does not disappear. It gets better while you're using lotions and creams and whatever. But if you stop using it, does it come back in 6 months? So anytime you have an ongoing health issue or a serious condition like a cancer, please file it, because this is where they get that data. And then if it goes on the presumptive list, guess what? Your case is already in. So file it, help them see. Okay, so we talked about urinary, bladder, kidney, all that stuff on the PACT Act. But for a lot of people, they don't realize that Agent Orange also had multiple things added on since 2021. It used to be you had to show that you had full-blown Parkinson's, which is also on the PACT Act. But the Agent Orange guys, it can take 7 years from the time you first start having the first little symptom of Parkinson's to actually being far enough into the disease to get a full-blown diagnosis. Because some people take 7 years to get serious enough inside the disease as far as their symptoms. So the VA said, you know what? I think we could do better than that for our veterans. If you served in an Agent Orange area, whether it's a storage site here in the US, you were loading planes or whatever and you got exposed to it, or you were over Vietnam, part of the DMZ of Korea, Thailand Air Force bases, your ship was within 12 miles of Vietnam. They were sucking in the water and using it to swab the decks and to wash the uniforms and stuff. So they were exposed. Parkinsonism, in other words, you've got all the classic symptoms, but we haven't given you the full-blown diagnosis yet. We're going to call it Parkinsonism, and you're going to be rated. Now, if 5 years down the road, it turns out that it's not Parkinson's, God forbid it's a brain tumor or something else that's causing all these neurological issues, the VA is going to look at that and say, okay, now we have to reconsider and possibly drop the Parkinsonism. For our PACT Act guys, maybe it turns out to be a brain cancer. So we're going to switch you from Parkinson's to brain cancer in your rating. So either way, if you're having any neurological conditions, you're having cancers, you're having anything ongoing, repetitive that you think might somehow be related to your exposures in service or whatever, please file it. Know that it may be denied, but it may be arguable. One of my Air Force guys repaired the cable, that arresting cable that catches jets when they land on carriers. It was the solvent that he used during maintenance work. And so he remembered it was PD 680. So I looked up that and the ingredients that were in it, and then I compared that to the OSHA reports on that chemical compound. And sure enough, that's where his cancer more than likely came from. So it put it in 50-50. Come on, federal government, you can't prove that he was exposed to anything else. He doesn't remember being exposed to anything else that had these carcinogens in it. So
we love having you on our team, James. We love it.
So if you know Vietnam guy, hypertension, those guys started having high blood pressure issues in their late 20s, early 30s, and on throughout life. That's like ridiculously early. And of course, high blood pressure leads to heart problems. So if you know a Vietnam guy or an Agent Orange exposed guy or gal, I call all of us guys. I don't, gender differentiate. So send them in. That heart blood pressure issue may be the thing that pushes them over that 100% thing. Or it may be what's going to lead to their death. And guys will say, well, I'm already 100%, but yeah, I've got this new condition, but I'm already 100%. Yeah. And if that's what contributes to your death and makes it eligible for your spouse to receive death compensation, do you want her to have to go through the months and months of waiting and gathering medical evidence and doing all that other stuff? Or do
No,
you
ma'am.
want it on your claim? Yeah, you want it already settled, already on
That's
your
it.
record at the VA. That's going to be, and it doesn't have to be a direct cause. One of my guys died, he drowned of pneumonia. Well, the reason he couldn't fight the pneumonia is because he couldn't get out of bed because the neuropathy in his legs was up past his knees, so he couldn't walk. And the reason he had the neuropathy was because he had uncontrolled type 2 diabetes for decades before from his Agent Orange exposure. But on the death certificate, they only put drowning. And when I met the widow 10 years later and talked to her about this stuff, I said, "Do you still have the medical records?" And she said, yes, she did, because she had fought the VA a couple times. And I said, well, then that's where that nexus comes in. A medical doctor needed to go through those medical records and form a professional opinion that these conditions are what caused him to have the pneumonia to the point where he drowned.
Okay, so you brought us back to the Nexus letter, and we have another question about it in the chat. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this opportunity to revisit that. And the second follow-on question about the Nexus letter was, well, what do you do? What do you do if the outside doctor that you normally see just doesn't want to help you with a Nexus letter? What do you do with that?
Okay. A lot of doctors think that a nexus letter has to be I know professionally and absolutely, positively, 100% that this injury is what caused this problem. But that's not the case. They are not putting their license on the line.
So how do we get them to do it?
Explain to them, this is not an absolute statement. This is a statement of as likely as not, 50-50. The scale is sitting there, possibly not, but it's balanced. So they're basically saying, here's my letter, and in that letter, I looked at their service treatment records, and guys will say, well, I don't have my service treatment record. Well, if you file a claim with VA, the first thing the Department of Veterans Affairs has to do is request that service treatment record, whether it's from the Department of Defense, the newer records, the electronic records and things like that, or if it's the old paper records, they have to reach out to the National Archive. They must make 3 requests of the National Archive. So after those 3 requests, they have to send you a letter saying, we haven't been able to find them. And of course, it's notorious that the VA would say things like, oh, well, it was burned up in the fire. You better check the dates of that fire and the part of the archive that was in that, because then the VA will say, oh, well, it was in the archive. It was in the fire. Wait a minute, dude. It wasn't even in the same year that the fire. So, yeah, I've seen those, and I've had to argue with the VA on those kind of things too. Or a lot of times when guys try and file their own records, they will go online and they will make a request from the National Archive. And little Betty that works there has gone down the long rows of things in the boxes and everything else. And she's dug out that guy's 201 file and all his service treatment records. And now 3 days later, she's at the copying machine making copies to send him or scanning them to put them on a DVD. And at the same time, the VA has made the request. And Tommy goes down and looks through the boxes and goes, oh, there's no record here. So he tells the VA, oh, we don't have any records for that guy. So
interesting.
So sometimes veterans defeat themselves. Just know that if you file a claim, the VA is going to reach out to the National Archive. They are going to reach out to your branch of service. So don't interfere with them. But if you were one of those guys that walked out, you did your active duty, went into the reserves, maybe you served for a while, and then like me, it was like an abrupt thing for me. When I was injured, all of a sudden it was like, oh, aren't you glad you got your 21 and a half sign here? You're in the retired reserves. Goodbye. We got to leave for Afghanistan in a couple weeks. So I was not out processed. The only thing I can say is the guy that was the new UA, who had previously been a trained transportation logistician guy in the Army who didn't know all the ins and outs of being a unit administrator. All he knew for sure was he couldn't give me my records. I could make copies. But some people walk out of those Reserve and National Guard units with their records. So if you've got them, make a good copy and then give them to the VA.
Okay, Jane, we're starting to get quite a few things in the chat. Looks like we got about 15 minutes, right? So
Okay.
so I'm gonna
This
go
will
with
be
one.
extended next month.
We
Next
will-
month we'll just continue on.
Until you guys get your compensation. We're gonna be talking about compensation every month until it's working.
Yeah.
Write that down. We are gonna do it every month until it's working. And the definition of working is some notes in the chat saying that I got my first checkup. I got my 0% rating. That you've had that transparent conversation, with whoever you need to have it, and that you are actually letting people know if you are experiencing pain or discomfort. So one of the questions that is happening, someone asked if you could help veterans. And I know that you do. So this is I need a good Jane Babcock commercial right about now.
Okay. I am over 65 and I am fully, completely retired. Everything I do as a volunteer. I am no longer accredited because I don't have an employer paying my bills.
Okay.
So that's part of the requirement with VA for accreditation is you have to have an employer so that you're not tempted to charge, which is not legal. So if you want advice, guidance, you want links and attachments to the different parts of the VA's benefit system, that's what I do. I do one-on-one phone calls. I do virtual classes. I've had different posts and things like that, VFW, whatever, say, hey, can we put you up on the TV in the meeting room and the guys can ask you questions and stuff? I do that kind of stuff. I do podcasts and web streams and live streams. I even did a TV show when PACAC first came out down in Houston, Texas. I was on their television for a half-hour show on the PACAC.
Girl, I need to be asking for your autograph. Go on, come on.
Well, I do all this for free. The only thing I ask is if you have a media contact, whether it's another podcast, but especially if it's any of the major networks, talk shows, NPR, PBS, that kind of stuff, you can give me some advice on how to hook up with them. Because right now, the most underserved veteran population is those over 65, actually over 75. The Vietnam guys, the Korean War guys, the widows of those guys and gals that are totally missing out on these benefits. That's where the largest part of those 2 million that are missing.
Wow, okay.
That have lost all their life savings, paying for the medications and the disorders and diseases that the VA should have been providing their care for. And now they're 77 years old and they're a greeter at McDonald's, at Walmart, because their Social Security check isn't enough to cover the bills. Because they paid for the cancer treatments that they had all these years, or maybe their wife is really sick, and if they served during wartime, her medical bills count against the income to reduce the income. Maybe they are eligible for anywhere from $35 to almost $2,000 a month through the pension program. So my commercial, meet Jane Babcock, your fellow veteran. I am on LinkedIn every day.
All right, we appreciate that. Now, the chat, we've got probably like maybe 10 minutes left. I see that there's a lot of activity in there, but I also see that we're getting some help, right? So, Al is answering some of the questions on the fly for us. Thank you very much, kind sir. One of the questions, or I'm going to try to paraphrase it. Hey there, Sergio, we see you.
Yes,
I'm
we
going to try.
do.
We see you. We're going to try to paraphrase the question I was going to mention. The person says something like, the group that he was serving in, several of them have been getting like neck fusions. Okay, in the bone. He says, but he served 28 years ago or something like that, but now he's starting to have issues with that. All right. So he was like, what do you recommend?
Okay. Any veteran
And he
walking.
and he also mentioned that while he was in service, that he didn't report it.
Right. And that's not uncommon.
Okay.
It's like the guy that was a cannon cocker in service. He doesn't go to sick call because his ears are ringing for an hour after he's done for the day. It goes to even Reserve and National Guard. Yeah, go to the 2 weeks training, and for an hour after you get back to the barracks, your hearing is muffled. You don't go to sick call for that. So what you need to be able to do is show that, A, I was exposed to this circumstance, what the weight of that equipment was, whether or not you had headaches and stuff like that. The other guys that serve that have the same issues, you can write buddy statements for them. They can write buddy statements for you about the conditions. It's like the range trainers. Range trainers very seldom ever wore both earplugs because they needed to be able to hear the kid that's new on the range that is yelling that he has a misfire or a jammed weapon or whatever. So a lot of times they kind of left one dangling. So, but that's a common occurrence. So being able to write those letters about, we were in an artillery range, our reserve unit, we went to the range, for 10 days straight at a time. We fired off so many rounds. Then you get the decibel readings of the equipment, like the engine room on a ship, what the decibel readings were for those engines. Those guys couldn't even yell at each other. They lip read.
Wow.
Because the engine made so much noise. And then the veteran is able to write about how, maybe they took incoming or something like that, and how he got knocked off his feet, and for an hour afterwards, his hearing was gone, or his ears were ringing, or your own personal experience, the people that you served with, their experience. And please, don't ever tell me you can't find the people you served with. I helped a Korean War veteran, an Army guy, find one of the Marines that saved his life.
Oh.
So if I can do that, Google your unit, Google the camp you were at, the time period you were in. There are Facebook groups all over the place and LinkedIn groups and everything else. My 1983 304 Signal B Company, Camp Long, Wonju, Korea. Somebody actually took our tour book and scanned it and put the whole thing out on the internet. I tripped across that one day, and all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, there's the Three Musketeers, and their names are really David Twiggs, Leroy, I have to think his last name. But anyways, I was able to go through the book and see the girls that were in my barracks, the guys that I served with. Oh my God, there's that jerk of a sergeant that I served under. So it's out there, people. You just have to take the time. So if you are a younger tech-savvy guy, and an older veteran is saying, I don't know how to find these guys, volunteer to do it, because believe me, if you do find those guys for them, you will feel so good about yourself.
That's good stuff. Veterans are more likely than any other group to take care of their own. So if you are that young tech savvy guy, and you are looking for a way to give back, do that. Do that search, help them find the people that they were in the military with. Because once you do that and then you start the buddy statement system that she just described, you don't just help yourself, You don't just help one other person, you help document what's going on for everyone that was in that same circumstance, right? Because data is power, people. Data is power. And the very thing that you won't talk about is the very thing that might just save the day for someone else. Right? We've got about 5 more minutes. I want to take a minute to point out you need to contact an accredited VSO. Is that right?
Yes, Veteran
Okay.
Service Officer.
All right. So when you
But
get up,
make sure they're accredited and that they're a VSO, not an accredited claims agent. If they want to charge you, then they're not a VSO. Now, I'm not saying that all claims agents are bad, but why pay for services that you don't need to? And then your VSO, your local VSO, is ready in there and waiting to help your family. We watched for every obituary. Oh, I know that this guy's rated for this condition or something like that. So we would reach out to the widow and say, in the next few weeks, please come into the office, sign the paperwork. We'll have it all ready for you.
all right. Okay, people. Accredited VSO. I know we like to get together and we like to hear about the benefits. We like to hear about compensation. And, we're all nodding our heads and thinking, did she say $1,653 a month? Right? But as much as we like hearing about it and it sounds good to us, if we are not reaching out to find the accredited veteran services officer who can help get us on the pathway, if we are not getting into the VA healthcare system so that we can go ahead and get a rating, then you guys are just coming on this show for no reason at all. What is that? We do not need practice just talking about it. We are talking about it so that we can get it done.
Reach out to me on LinkedIn. I will send you the VA 101 resource list of e-tools and attachments that cover all these basic benefits. And then if you need to do a one-on-one call, need some guidance, need to understand a regulation better, or you got a denial letter and you're not sure why, because, veterans have a tendency to read to the word denied and they stop. Or they read to the word 0% service connected and they go, they denied me. No, they just said the damage right now isn't sufficient to pay you compensation. But if it's a hearing loss thing, every 2 years you go in and get that hearing test until you meet the 10%.
That's right. That's right. We love that.
Yep. Happy to be there for you guys. And gals.
We got about 2 more minutes. If there's anyone out there with a burning question, now's your time. We said hi to Shirley. We said hi to Sergio. I think if there's anyone else out there, I see you, Al. I see a couple other people out there. Jason, Mark. Thank you for tuning in. And thank you for doing your part to pursue your benefits and to get them working in your life, in the life of your family, and in your community. I'm gonna, Jane, you ready to just about sign off? Al, is there anything else you need us to make sure we cover? Are we good?
Now remember, folks, next month we're going to go further because we had a 3-page outline and we didn't get page 1 done. We have all sorts of stuff. What is the 1, the 5, the 8, the 10, the 20-year rules about VA compensation?
All right, we got to start there right off the bat next month. The 1, 5, 8, whatever else you said, rules about compensation.
Yeah, and how to fight it when they say, "Oh, well, we're considering reducing your benefit." Odds are, it doesn't take much So we'll talk about that next month.
Thank you, Miss Jane. And I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in. We love it that you are a part of this. Invite somebody to join you next month. Spread the word to get an accredited VSO working on your situation. Remember, getting benefits for you helps you. It helps your family. It helps the people that were in the service with you, and it helps your community economically. Ops for Vets. If you're interested in having an opportunity to kind of show your business, you want to reach out to me on that. My email address is Tracy, TRACEY, at highsurety.com. That's HEISSURETY.com. Send me an email. Let me know that you want to have your veteran-owned business featured. And we will see you next month. And we will do more than one page of notes on compensation. Thanks so much for tuning in, and see you next time.
Take care. God bless, and thank you for your service.
You see him? He's just as dead as we are. Now you listen to me, youngster. Someday you're gonna wake up fighting on a beachhead. You pray to God some guy doesn't get killed because of your foolishness. You join the Marine Corps, Owens. We don't deal in pity and sympathy.
I try.
Try. We don't try in this Marine Corps. We either do or we don't. We don't straddle any fences. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
Every time you make one of these little mistakes of yours, you're gonna turn around and I'll be standing right there.
Need any money or anything, Man, I got over like a fat rat when I got out, man. I got my school money coming from the government once a month. I got my veterans check coming once a month. I got my 50% medical check coming to me for the rest of my life.